Okay, Bernie served his mission in Taiwan and returned home before I went. I went in 1962 and got home in 1964. Um, while I was on my mission, I met a convert named, her name was Li Tsai Feng. She became good friends and helpers with my companionship and so on, and I gave her the name of Maisie because I thought she was amazing. She had such excellent, excellent English language and so on. Anyway, she came. I got home in June of '62, and she came to this country in September. Not '62, 1964. She came to this country in 1964 to go to BYU, and we'd been friends in Taiwan, and of course we were friends here. I was teaching school in Salt Lake City. I taught sewing at Lincoln Junior High, and Maisie, of course, was living in Provo, going to BYU. For the Christmas holidays that year, she went with me to Idaho. And Edith was working in Deseret Industries in Pocatello. And I went to Pocatello to give Edith a ride home from work that day. And Maisie and I were walking around in the DI store waiting for Edith to get off work. And I looked across the store, and there was a guy in a cowboy hat, and I said to myself, I could go for a guy like that. And lo and behold, pretty soon he came over and said to Maisie and me, he said, "Merry Christmas" in Chinese, which really surprised us. And he just said that and walked off and went, looking at something else. And I said, Maisie, go ask him how come he knows Chinese. So we walked over and talked to him, and he said he had served a mission in Taiwan. And that's all there was to that. And then after the Christmas holidays were over, Maisie went back to Provo, and I got a postcard from her in the week saying, Elder Knapp, I moved in with Judy Au, and Judy Au's on Elder Knapp's ward at BYU, and he talked to me, and you better come down Sunday, and he asked about you, and you better come on down and visit me. So I did, and I went to church with her, and there was Elder Knapp, and he invited us to go to for a car ride. He took us to Heber City to visit Sister Clegg. She was a gal that had returned from a mission in Taiwan. She wasn't there that day, but anyway, that's how our courtship started. So I saw him in December. Now, he had seen me at a Chinese club meeting, but I didn't see him. I didn't know him at all. So I saw him in December, met him in January, and then we were married in July 22nd of 1965. Bernie had grown up working in a sawmill in the timber in Island Park, Idaho. And when he heard that I had timbered, he could not believe it. He could not believe that he could meet a returned missionary that had worked in the timber. And we had similar backgrounds, similar value systems. It all seemed to fit into place, and as it moved forward and seemed like we might get married, and I prayed about it. My prayer was, is Bernie Knapp the right person for me to marry? And it seemed to me like the Spirit said, well, you don't even need to ask. You already know it is. It all lined up together for you. So now, when I took him to meet my family, I and in theory, why Bernie should have asked my father if he could if he would give permission to marry me, and Bernie tried to get Bernie to ask. My pa tried to get Bernie to ask him, and Bernie would not. He would not. He would not ask. To the point that I was embarrassed. I was sitting there between the two of them, Pa trying to get Bernie to ask, and Bernie wouldn't. And so,
because he thought you and he were old enough to decide for them yourselves, right?
Tim just said, because Bernie thought that Louise and Bernie were old enough to decide for themselves, and yeah, that's what I heard that Bernie said later. He hadn't told me that at the time.
Well, he told me he asked another girl a few years before, and her mother told him no, and he wasn't going to go through that again. So.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how disappointed Pa was, but however disappointed he was, it didn't last long, because the fact that Bernie invited my family to go on our honeymoon really raised him up high in Pa's estimation. He thought that was the ultimate son-in-law. But we got married. I can't remember if we got married on Thursday or Friday. It seems to me like we got married on Thursday. Then went to Island Park the first night, then back to Lava for a reception, and then the next night, and then back to Island Park. And Bernie's sister Marge had married Barney South, and they had a sawmill in Island Park, and they had several cabins. And we stayed in Marge's cabin. And then Monday morning, the family members came and met us, and we went through Yellowstone Park. Now, there was my parents that came, and Irma and Keith, and some of their children, and Ken and Nida Lewis. Ken was dating Nida at that point. She was a neighbor of ours growing up. Go ahead. And then Linda was there. Jim was there. And I'm not sure who else. Oh, Maisie was there. But anyway, we toured Yellowstone, and the people, I think they stayed in the cabins in Island Park. So I said we met at DI. We furnished our house in DI, and we've been DI ever since. So that's my story. Any questions? Okay, well, what?
Can you tell us what Merry Christmas sounds like in Chinese?
Shangdong Kuai Le. Oh, that's New Year, isn't it?
No, I think that's it.
No, huh?
That's it, isn't it?
No.
Yeah, I can't.
No, that's not Happy New Year's.
That's Merry Christmas. That's what you've always told me.
Shangdong Kuai Le, yeah.
Yeah, I've heard Joseph say
John.
Happy New Year in Chinese. And
I
I'm
got my
sure that they're
grandson John
different.
Calabro sitting here correcting my Chinese for me. He's 9.
Well, he's trying to tell you Happy New Year and not Merry Christmas, so tell him to be quiet.
Oh, okay.
Or tell him to say.
All right.
Say it.
So
Do you remember?
that was
No,
That
but
was
it's,
that.
it's
Now-
a lot different.
since that was a short story. If you have any questions or comments, fine. Otherwise, I think we should kind of follow Doug's suggestion a few weeks ago, and that was maybe have a discussion about what we've learned while we've been doing home church during the COVID pandemic, or subject about ancestors or people that have been an inspiration to us. Let's take one of those topics and talk about that for the rest of the time.
Should I stop it or keep recording?
What?
What can you guys tell us about John, the first Duke convert to the church, bishop of the first Provo ward, and what do we know about the Duke heritage?
Jonathan, is Audrey with us? Doug, is Audrey with us?
She's close. I don't know if she's hearing every word.
Well, okay. I'll tell what I know, and then if you guys know something different, you can pipe in. Jonathan Oldham Duke was the first bishop of the Provo First Ward way back in the day. And then his son, John Duke, moved to Heber City. And we often call it Heber, but my mother always called it Heber City. And my father thought that she was trying to be highfalutin to make that little burg a city. But that is the name of it, is Heber City. So John Duke moved to Heber City. And John Duke had 2 wives. Now this is kind of fun because Doug and Linda and Nola and I took a trip to the Heber City Cemetery last week. And we stopped in Charleston too, and in Marion too. But we talked all about this then. There's my mother's parents have a grave there. It's James Alfred Duke and Jeanette Gardner Duke. And James Alfred's father was John Duke, and he had 2 wives. And they were Martha and Mary. And my grandfather, James Alfred Duke, according to my mother, watched as the U.S. Marshals came to the house looking for John Duke to arrest him because he was living polygamy. And he hid, and they had dogs, and they found him, and they hauled him off to jail.
Did he get out?
He got out, but I don't know how long he served. In those days, there was a period of time when they did jail polygamists in Utah, and I don't know how long they kept him in. There's probably a history of his somewhere that tells about that, but I don't know. And then, my grandfather, James Alfred Duke, was a school teacher in Charleston, and that's where he met our grandmother, Jeanette Gardner. Now, in those days, you didn't have to have a 4-year college degree before you could teach school. He was a few years older than her, but there's a building there that my mom showed me before she died that was a store where Grandma was a clerk. and Grandpa came in to the store. Mom said that he came in pretending that he was coming to buy candy, but is really coming to see Jeanette. And Doug and I and Linda have a picture of us in front of that store. It says, Holiness to the Lord, Zion's Mercantile. Let's see, Zion Mercantile in ZCMI. Anyway, Mercantile Institute. And that sign's still on it. That's boarded up. That's all I have to say about that.
In the Winterton house, there's a history of John Newton and his parents. His sister found a copy of the Book of Mormon in one of his, going away some of his clean clothes, found the Book of Mormon and it was buried under the clothes in his drawer. And she thought she better tell her mother about it. And her mother thought, well, I better check this out. See what he's getting into. And so she and the sister both read it and started going to the meeting. They didn't tell John to his father because he didn't like any of the churches. He didn't like religion. And so they finally were converted. And one day they said, we're going, they got ready to go be baptized. And Alma, his father, come in and said, where are you going? He said, well, we're going to go be baptized in the Mormon church. You better wait. I'll go get dressed and go with you. So they all went and got baptized. And apparently he found the Book of Mormon and read it too. But John Duke's parents both died of, I think it was cholera in winter quarters. They're both buried in winter.
Well, now Clinton, what I just said was that John Duke's dad was Jonathan Oldham Duke, the first bishop in Provo. So was his dad a John Duke? Huh?
It would have been Jonathan Oldham, his parents then.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. It was Jonathan Oldham Duke, and it was Jonathan Duke. Jonathan Oldham Duke was, he was converted, I don't know where, in New York, I think.
That's in the Winterton house?
Yeah, that history, the history is in the Winterton house. When you go stay in the Winterton house, there is a lot to do if you have to read what's there. There's Hiram Winterton's life story, and there's that Alma Duke. No, Alma. Van Wagner, sorry. Van Wagner. Alma Van Wagner. So it wasn't the new line.
Okay.
I've got something to add. One of the stories that I remember hearing when I went to a Duke reunion is, I guess it would have been Jonathan, when he went up to Heber, he carried the first plow on his back that went into that valley. I'm going to press his story here. I don't know the details of it. Another thing that I thought about when, Louise, you're talking about you and Bernie and the DI, I thought it was humorous. Dawn, when she first got married or was dating her husband, Jonathan Payne said to Dawn that his mother was down to the DI, and Dawn said, oh, how fun. I'm sure glad that she let her shopping there. And he said, no, Dawn. She goes to the DI to donate things.
So her generosity was our benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes, I got the wrong ancestor. It was Van Wagner. All that Van Wagner, John Van Wagner was their son.
Oh, okay.
And John Van Wagner was Sarah Van Wagner's father, and she married Hiram Winter.
Okay, thanks, Clinton. Did any of you, sorry, what?
Stories get better with age.
Yeah. Did any of you watch the video of Elder Bednar about COVID-19 and religious freedom?
Yes.
Yeah.
Anybody want to comment on that?
I thought it was good, and I was quite surprised that he addressed it and made the comments that he did.
Oh, what was surprising to you about it?
I thought the church's stand would be a little more neutral and don't offend anybody. And I thought he was a little more forthright and bold and on the subject.
Okay.
I thought it was the strongest